Today, I'm going to compare race prediction calculators for my 2019 Chicago Marathon.
I've been searching, follow every step, every road, every single trace, analyzing, try to figure out those lines up on your face. You're still a mystery, those secrets kept away from me. Those doors are closed, closed, closed. How can you make the fire burn so brightly when you're so cold, cold, cold? Never rest lonely as together with you, still together with you is where I wanna be. It makes no sense. Never felt happiness together with you, still together with you is where I wanna be. It's making no sense.
4.05 miles, 7 minutes 37 seconds per mile on my last Tempo Tuesday run of this marathon training block. Absolutely gorgeous weather out there. Conditions are getting nice and crisp. Running in some full tights and some long sleeves. That's kind of my favorite kind of running weather. If it gets a little bit colder where I have to put on like a stocking cap and some gloves, that's absolutely some of my favorite running conditions. We may even kind of get to that. Not that I would wear that for a race, but we might even get to that this weekend in terms of the weather forecast, but we'll see how that goes. The workout for today was 6 times quarter-mile intervals, starting out at marathon pace and then building up to half marathon pace. Plenty of rest in between, 2 minutes rest in between each rep, and then follow all those 6 reps with 1 mile easy at about 7:20 to about 8 minutes per mile. So feeling good out there. The legs are turning over just fine. When I wake up and kind of when I go to bed, my legs still feel a little bit sore, a little bit tender. So the taper is going well, but there's still more taper to do, but it's still a couple of days out. So we still have plenty of time. I think the taper is going well. One of the things that I like to do in the taper, once all the hard work is done from the workouts of the marathon training plan, is to put my numbers through the race prediction calculators and see kind of where the algorithms think that I will stack up compared to where I think I'm going to stack up. And I've done this once before, and I'll post a link in the description in case you want to check out that video. But here are the 4 different models that I'm going to take a look at this time. And they all kind of work in similar but slightly different manners. I'm not sure exactly what the algorithms are behind each of these ones either, but here are the 4 that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at the Macmillan Race Predictor, 538, Runner's World, and the Tanda Race Predictor model. So let's just get to the numbers. So for the numbers, what I'm using is I'm pulling data from my Nike Run Club app, which is nice because what it does, it will calculate all your mileage for a month. And fortunately, it worked out really easily for me this time. Where September, I had basically there was 30 days in September, but a nice 4-week chunk that I could look at that led right up to my peak that culminated in the Chicago Half Marathon. And so that gave me 219 miles of running. At least there was one run that I didn't put in there. So Nike Run Club, as far as it knows, I have to manually enter data to it. It knows that I have 219.3 miles, which is easy enough to calculate. But it also gives me an average pace for all of the miles together, which is really important. That gives me an average pace for all of my mileage at 7 minutes and 37 seconds per mile. And the weekly average breaks down to 54.82 miles per week. So those are kind of like my base numbers that I'm going to use to fill in. The other number that I'm going to use to fill in is my most recent race, which was a half marathon. 1 hour, 26:11 seconds. I think that's a pretty good number for me to use for these models because it's been during this training block. It is untapered, but it is during this training block, so it's a very recent event, and it's one that I raced pretty hard. And so I think it's an accurate reflection of kind of where I'm at in terms of like a dipstick. So let's get into the numbers. For Macmillan, I put in my most recent race. Entered in that time there, and it spit out a prediction for me of 3 hours and 10 minutes and 23 seconds. Now, I'm shooting for a 3-hour marathon or 2:59. So that's pretty disappointing to hear. But one of the things that I think that it should take into account, I kind of think it should take into account how many weekly miles you're running and maybe how old you are. But as far as that particular model, it just goes off of the most recent race that you've run and then your goal race, which for me is the marathon. So that's 10 minutes away from my goal based on my most recent half marathon. The 5:38 mile. Now 5:38 isn't like a running company. It isn't a coach. They do a lot of just statistical analyses. They're number crunchers, but they've put together a race model that they use. Now theirs incorporates not only a recent race, but also your weekly mileage, which I think is important because, for example, like if I'm getting a 1:26 half marathon, if I'm doing that on 40 miles a week or 90 miles a week, I think that makes a big difference. So that one, I put in my numbers. I put in the 1:26.11 and 54.8 miles per week. But it gave me a predicted marathon time of 3:11.57, basically 3:12. So 12 minutes off of my goal. So again, numbers aren't looking so good. Switch over to Runner's World. Now, Runner's World, for whatever reason, I think theirs is designed to be used on a phone, but it's so weird how you have to use an interface with this one when you're using the web. That's an aside. That I put in, again, my half marathon time and my weekly mileage. It gave me back a race prediction of 3:07.54. Still really far off. The last one and the one that I kind of put the most credence in, because not only does it take in a recent race, not only does it take in your weekly mileage, but it also takes into account your age as well as the pace at which you're running those miles. And so the Tanda Race Predictor, when I put that in there, half marathon, weekly mileage, and 7:37 per mile for all of those miles, like warm-up miles, run commuting miles, hard workout miles, long run miles, all of it put together, that gave me a race prediction of 3:03.58. So still about 4 minutes off of where I need to be, but I think that gives me a pretty good indication of where I can go. Now, if you tweak the Tanda Race Predictor model and then bump up the mileage. Now, remember that 4th week in September that I was talking about was technically a taper week, so we did come back a little bit on mileage. Although with the race in there, it brought down the overall pace a little bit. But if I kept that 7:37 minutes per mile pace on it for all my global miles, and then bumped up the average miles to like the 60 mile range, which my peak week was like 60 miles. And then I think I overran my first taper week by a whole bunch. So not as many miles in this marathon training block as I'm used to. But if you bump it up to like 60, I think 62 average miles for the last 4 weeks, that would have put me right at under 3 hours. So I think that the Tanda is pretty right on. I tend to put a lot of credence in the Tanda model if I'm going to believe in one of the models to begin with. So I think that's usually the closest one that's there. Still, again, not putting me at my goal pace or goal result of 2:59. So normally for something like this, I would say there's still more work to do. There isn't more work to do at this point. I just got to get my body right, get it as rested and as fresh for the race as I can, get my mind right. Now that I have all these results, kind of put them out of my mind if I can, and I'm going to go forward with my race plan. I'll talk to you guys more about that in a video coming up later this week. I got to meet with Coach first. We're going to meet and confer, talk about that a little bit, where my pacing should be. We're going to talk also about like nutrition and warm-up schedules, all that kind of thing. So we'll go over all that in a video coming up later this week. Before I go today, I do want to talk about, we do have one more charity runner for this week for the Chicago Marathon. It's Landon Thiessen. He's a young runner. He's still in high school, and he's actually going to be trying to run to place in his age group as one of the best marathoners in his age group. So good luck to him. He's going to be raising money as well for the American Cancer Society. Cancer is something that has unfortunately affected his family, and that's a charity that he wants to be able to raise money for. He's hoping to raise $2,000 for it, so I was happy to donate $70 to help Landon out, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?